But we've been taking a look at holy relationships, meaning deep, rich, significant, authentic relationships. And that can be a relationship with a lover, with our spouse, with a partner, with a friend, with a coworker, with anyone. Deep, meaningful relationships. And we began with the importance of the relationship that we have with ourselves, and realizing that sometimes there's some significant healing work we need to do within ourselves so that we feel worthy of giving and receiving love, and we are able to give and receive love. Last week we looked at the importance of what I call the sacred exchange, meaning the way that we communicate with one another, and the importance of the words that we use and how we communicate. And today we're going to take a bit of a through line with that as we look at this idea of nourishing fellowship, nourishing our relationships, nourishing them individually and nourishing them in community. I think that one of the things that's really important for us to remember as students of consciousness, as unity students and science of mind students, is that the world that we live in, the way that we interact as a human family, is absolutely a reflection of what's going on inside of us as individuals. That as each of us begins to wake up, as each of us begins to improve in the way that we treat one another, eventually the tide turns and we begin to see this powerful rippling effect going outward of being able to create a more loving, just, and harmonious world. But in our teaching, we look at what's going on in the world and we try to recognize our part in it. And we try to look at how can we grow and change and be even more of a light and an inspiration and an influence to those around us so that collectively we can lift the whole. It's the idea that the health of the whole depends upon the relationships that we have with each other. And so each of us plays a role in this. Each of us has a part to play, probably many parts to play. And in some of our relationships, it's easier to play the part that is ours to play. And in other relationships, it can be more challenging. And so I want to share with you a kind of a process that helps us, I think, to be better equipped to nourish the heart of fellowship, to nourish the heart of community. But before jumping into those, I want to say that this image occurred to me the other day, and it's the image, kind of a metaphor, that a lot of people look at relationships like a beautiful cut floral arrangement, wanting the beauty there all put together in a nice, neat little package, the fragrance there. And what we often forget is that the minute those flowers are cut from the root system, the minute that they are cut and put in that vase, what do they begin to do? Die, because the water can kind of sustain them, but the water doesn't nourish them like the soil in which they were planted. Relationships, holy relationships, deep, authentic relationships are not like that cut floral relationship. They're cut floral arrangement. They're like the flowers in a garden that require nourishment in order to not just survive, but in order to thrive. And so in terms of us, what can we look at that can equip us to nourish the heart of fellowship? What are the things that we can remind ourselves are practical things we can do to do everything we possibly can to support that garden of relationship? And so there are 5 ideas I want to share with you. The first one is the idea of noticing. Noticing. How very important it is in terms of nourishing a relationship And I think this is true whether we're talking about a friendship, a love relationship, a family dynamic, a business relationship. The idea of noticing, the idea of paying attention. One of the core practices in spiritual living is a practice of awareness, which is another way of saying pay attention. And so in relationships, paying attention, noticing, means that I am aware of what I'm seeing right in front of me. When I'm interacting with you, I'm noticing how you seem to be. I'm noticing, and I'm not talking about your appearance, I'm not talking about what you're wearing, I'm talking about your energy. I'm talking about the look on your face. I'm talking about the sense I have of you as we are interacting. I'm noticing how I hear you. I'm noticing your voice. I'm paying attention. Does that make sense? And if you really want to take it to the next level, especially in terms of friendship and in terms of, say, in the work environment, in noticing and paying attention, in the word notice is the word note. I cannot tell you how many times on a Sunday morning when I leave here, meaning from the lobby area and go back to my office, I'm jotting down notes, trying to remind myself of an interaction that I just had maybe with someone who's here for the first time, or an interaction I had with one of you where you may have shared something with me that was difficult for you to share, a challenge that you're going through, or to notice if one of you is grabbing a tissue and dabbing your eyes because of something you heard in a song. I may or may not reach out to you, but I will hold you in my prayer. It's not an extraordinary act. It's just a practice. It's just a habit. And so nourishing the heart of fellowship, nourishing the heart of relationship, regardless of the kind of relationship, is noticing. It's paying attention, which builds upon what I talked about last week and really emphasized, which was the idea of really listening, right? Really listening and noticing. So the first is noticing. And what happens, I think, when we get better at and make noticing a deliberate practice, is we begin to appreciate. And that's the second. That nourishing the heart of fellowship has, as part of the practice of appreciation. I think appreciation is a spiritual practice. It's an inward spiritual practice. If I ask you to call to mind a person or an activity or an experience you've had that you appreciate or appreciated, and then to hold that feeling of appreciation, I know that you can do that. You can literally practice, do it right now. Practice holding gently, not like this, gently bringing into your awareness the feeling of appreciation. There is science around the benefit of that practice of appreciation. And probably the best science I'm aware of around the efficacy of appreciation is the science that comes out of the Institute of HeartMath up the road in Northern California. And there they have practiced or researched and studied which emotions people hold that can help to put their heart rhythm in a state of coherence. And the number one most effective that they have studied is the feeling of appreciation, the very thing I asked you to practice a moment ago. In order to experience that feeling of appreciation, it usually requires noticing. Noticing or remembering is another way that we notice, right? I asked you to think about an experience or a person or something in your life that you appreciated. You had to pay attention, right? To bring that back to awareness, and then as you do, you can move into that feeling of appreciation. And what they've learned in their study at the Institute of HeartMath is not only is that beneficial for the person doing the practice of appreciation, but when you're in relationship, fellowship with another, it also has a very subtle but definite impact on the other as well. It's probably one of the reasons we innately or instinctively can sense when we are with somebody that is safe to be with, because there's this feeling of appreciation that's emanating from them. So the appreciation is more the inward experience. And then what happens, so we've noticed, right? We're paying attention to the other, we're noticing how the person looks, what they're saying, their tone of voice. We're entering into their spiritual field, if you will, and we're feeling a sense of appreciation because we're recognizing the good. The next step is acknowledgement. Say that with me. Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement. I think one of the most healing practices that we can engage in is the practice of acknowledgement. And acknowledgement takes appreciation from the inner to the outer. Acknowledgement is me saying something to you or writing something to you. And deep, mature acknowledgement, I would say, is more than just the very simple thank you, or I appreciate you, or job well done. The kind of acknowledgement that I'm talking about has specificity to it. It is acknowledgement that is specific because I have been paying attention. I am noticing you. I do feel a sense of appreciation for what I have seen, and now I want to verbalize it in a specific way. And so it's not just thank you for, but I really think through what is the specifics that I want to acknowledge. In Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, after the certain basic fundamental survival needs are met, we move into the higher tier of emotional needs being met, needs of belonging. And I think in addition to the need that we have to belong, we are social beings. And our spiritual practice is a way, I think, to help us connect in a more meaningful way with one another. When we feel a sense of belonging, we take that further by putting into words what it is that we are seeing, that we appreciate, and we acknowledge that, as I said, with specificity. With specificity. I can think of several people in my life in this community who teach me how to be specific with praise and appreciation. I think of some of you in this room that over the years have sent me notes or cards or left voice messages with such gratitude, such appreciation that was so very specific that in some ways it took my breath away, more than a simple thank you. You've been on the receiving end of that, have you not? How does it make you feel? Pretty incredible, pretty wonderful, right? And there's not one of us in this room that can't do that. Think of what the ripple effect that has. I can remember as a kid, and probably I still like it, just throwing pebbles into a lake or a pond, and just sitting and watching those ripples go out until they hit the edge of the lake or the pond or whatever it may be. But they do what? They don't stop until they hit something that they can't pass. The kindness that we express verbally with specificity goes deep into, I believe, goes deep into a person's heart and soul and helps to fill them up. Would you not agree that there is a hungering in our world today for people to feel appreciated and acknowledged and loved up? I don't believe that people who feel appreciated, acknowledged, and loved up hurt people. It's hurting people. There's a whole song, I think Bob Sima wrote it. Hurting people hurt people, healed people heal people. When we are loved up, when we feel that our little part has been seen, appreciated, and acknowledged, we are far more likely to want to do more of it, right? Is that not true of you? I know it's true of me. When we simply say thank you, it's nice. Please don't stop. I mean, if you don't say thank you now, please start saying thank you now. Mama was right, and so was Daddy when he said, pleases and thank yous. Don't stop. And invite yourself. Can you take a step further? And never assume that the other person knows. Say it anyway. Have you ever had somebody say too frequently to you that they appreciate you? Probably not. Probably not. I was using a little bit of an illustration for myself, and to me, what is the difference between the more casual, polite kinds of thank yous, which I'm still all for those, and I'm suggesting we can go further. What's the difference? It's like the ordinary kind of thank you, to me, is like a mirror. It's just reflecting back to the person the obvious. Whereas an acknowledgement that is specific to what the person did or how they did it or what effort they put forth to doing it or the difference that their effort made, that specific acknowledgement is like a laser beam. And it, I think, goes right into their heart, right into their soul, right? And that's what fills us up. And then the fourth is, so we notice, which means we're paying attention. We appreciate, which is the inner experience of the good that we've seen. We acknowledge with specificity. And then we embody what we might call the language of presence or touch. The language of presence or touch. So acknowledgement to me is usually verbal, although it can be written. But this is not verbal, it's physical. Now, disclaimer here. The kind of touch that, and I am talking about physical touch right now, the kind of touch I'm talking about is not sexual. The kind of touch I'm talking about is a kind of touch that says, I see you. I recognize you. It's the kind of touch that may be the touch of encouragement or the touch of empathy or the touch of kindness. It's a I've written it this way, it's a micro moment of connection. We've all given them and we've all received them. And I almost think that the giving of them is almost automatic. I think that there's something hardwired in us that knows and wants to reach out with a reassuring touch when we see someone that's really hurting. Are you with me on this? It's almost automatic. We may question whether it's appropriate, and we can always ask, but I think there's almost a very natural tendency that we have as spiritual communal beings, that when we see another that we sense is hurting or is afraid, that besides trying to reassure them maybe with our words, that a touch on the shoulder, tap on the back, a touch on the hand, nothing sexual about it, but just a way of saying, I see you, and I feel some of your pain or fear or grief or struggle. Have you ever been on the receiving end of that? And how did that feel? Healing probably, right? Healing probably. I think about how we were when we were coming out of COVID and coming back as a community. I noticed so many things, but one of the things I noticed was that people seemed to want to not just be together. I mean, they may have been wearing their masks and still trying to protect themselves that way. But it almost seemed that we had a desire to touch, to connect physically, to feel that we were not so alone and not so separate. We know that there is study done on the importance of physical touch for well-being. Physical touch, the right kind of physical touch, releases, what is it called, the bonding hormone, oxytocin, that just, it's a feel-good hormone. There is, believe it or not, there is an institute called the Touch Research Institute. There are people who study this stuff. The very thing that I think almost naturally and spiritually, intuitively, we just know. We know because we've been on the receiving end of it, and we know when we've been on the giving end of it, how it has been received. Have you ever been in a situation with somebody that you knew was really struggling and hurting? Maybe they were afraid or they were in deep grief, and you felt like you had no words. And the only thing you felt you could offer, and maybe you said these words, "Can I give you a hug?" Right? Can I give you a hug? No moving parts, no batteries, no monthly payments, and no fees. Inflation-proof, non-taxable. In fact, it's quite relaxable. It can't be stolen. It won't pollute. One size fits all. Do not dilute. It uses little energy, but yields results enormously. Relieves your tension and your stress. Invigorates your happiness. Combats depression, makes you beam, and elevates your self-esteem. Your circulation, it corrects, without unpleasant side effects. It is, I think, the perfect drug. May I prescribe, my friend, the hug. Maybe not the best piece of poetry, but we relate to it, right? I think packed in that little corny little poem is a lot of simple wisdom. And then the last that I'll wrap up with here is, and sometimes this is like the advanced course depending upon who's in front of you physically or calling to mind, is seeing the miracle of life in everyone. I mean, really, it is a miracle that any one of us is here. And yet there's so many of us. And some of us, it's so easy to love the miracle of life that they express. And others, it isn't so easy, right? But our spiritual practice is to behold, in unity terms, we call it beholding the Christ in you, not the Jesus in you, but the Christ essence, the perfect idea of what it means to be a man or a woman. Beholding the Christ, or beholding, seeing the miracle of life in everyone. Because it is true, we are all the breath of God. We are all the breath of life. We are invited to open our awareness to see everyone around us as the miracle of life expressing itself. We see and deeply appreciate each other as miracles of life itself, regardless of the preference of personality or behavior. I had somebody write me recently saying, with all that's going on in our country politically and all the vitriol and hatred and hate speech and actions and so forth, this person was saying, you know, a lot of it seems to be directed toward one person in particular or a group of people in particular. What if we really took the highest road possible? And what if we really made it our practice to send love to everyone? The challenge for us, or the invitation for us, is who's on the opposite end of the spectrum from wherever you are. Call that person or persons or group to mind. Can you call to mind someone or some things that are on the opposite spectrum of where you are? The deep spiritual practice, I'm not saying it's easy, is to extend the same love, to hold the same high regard of support and potential and possibility for that person or that group as we do for the ones that are the easiest for us to love and to cherish. To hold and see the miracle of life expressing through everyone. I'm so glad that at least in my understanding of the Bible and in my reading of the Gospels many times over my years as a minister, that I never came across a place where Jesus said this stuff was easy. Because if he did, I'd say that's my cop-out, because I don't find some of this easy. I find some of this, as a student of mine said years ago, unity is so daily. Unity is so daily. This was a person who grew up in a religious tradition where all that they thought they needed to do was show up to church on Sunday morning and then go right back into the rest of their life. And in that particular membership class, that person shared with me, unity is so daily. That's what makes it hard, but that's what also makes it transformative. Wherever we feel the greatest resistance or challenge to apply these ideas of nurturing and nourishing the heart of fellowship, that's where the gold is. That's where the work is, and where the work is where the gold is. Namaste.